morning, class. You're welcome to another episode of GS 151. I'll be taking you the eighth topic, and it is titled Farm Management. I am Dr. Mobolaji Osunmakinde from the Department of Agricultural Economics and Farm Management. So, what is farm management? Before I define farm management, it is important that I tell you what agricultural economics is, because farm management is a practical aspect of the applied science of agricultural economics. So, agricultural economics is defined as the application of economic principles to the operations in the agricultural industry. Just like pure economics, it is concerned with resource allocation, but basically in the agricultural industry. Therefore, farm management is the application of physical and biological sciences in keeping up with the economics of profitable resource allocation for maximizing a farmer's net farm income. I'll take that again. Farm management is simply the application of physical and biological sciences in keeping up with the economics of profitable resource allocation for maximizing a farmer's net farm income. There are three categories of people involved in farm management. The first set of people are the farmers themselves. They own the farm and the resources on the farm. They determine what type of farming activities that will take place on the farm. The second group of people are the extension agents. And these are field officers who are well informed about current research findings in technologies and innovations, which they introduce to the farmers with the sole aim of improving their productivity and efficiency. They are the closest to the farmers. And the last set of people involved in farm management are the researchers. Researchers, they collect data, analyze them. They collect data using well-structured questionnaires and record sheets, and they analyze the data collected for the purpose of drawing management conclusions, which could help farmers to take proper decisions in their farm operations. Now, let's look at the types of decisions that are made in farm management, or types of problems that come up in farm management. They include, number one, what combinations of crops and or livestock to produce. That is, what type of farming enterprise to engage in. And we have quite a number of them. Monocropping, that is cultivating one type of crop. Mixed cropping, that's cultivating different types of crops. Then animal husbandry, that's basically raising of livestock. And we have mixed farming, that's combination of cropping and raising of animals. So it is one of the decisions that is made in farm management. What combination of crops and livestock to produce? What size of farm to operate? Is it going to be small scale, medium, or large? And what method of production to adopt given available resources? And also, what kind of machineries or equipment to use? What type of farming? Is it going to be traditional farming that involves the use of hoes and cutlasses and other, crude implements? Or is it going to be mechanized farming? And how much of farm labor or how much of farm labor to use, and how much of hired labor to use? Another important decision that needs to be made is the appropriate time to produce the crops and or livestock. Crops and animals, thrive in different seasons. For instance, poultry will do better in during the dry seasons. Of course, they are raised also during the wet or rainy season, but an average farmer will prefer to do the poultry business during when the rains are not much during the dry season. So that's another important decision to be made. Then, how much of farm produce to consume at home and how much to sell to others? What sources of credit are open to the farmers? Credit can be obtained from either commercial banks or the cooperative societies, which most of these farmers belong to, and also from the traditional money lenders. So, I mean, this is one of the decisions that is made in farm management. Um, how to make proper use of available credits. It is important to make sure that the credits obtained, you know, is used for intended purposes and not wasted on trivial and ephemeral uses. And at what price to market the farm produce at the end of the day? Then what are the problems of marketing? The solutions to these problems will determine whether a farmer will be successful or not. Now let's look at the duties of the farm manager. Given the problems and the decisions to be made in farm management, the farm manager must be prepared to do certain things. And one, he must be able to set some objectives for himself and the farm that he is managing. Now, if the farm manager is not the owner of the farm, then the owners of the farm would have given him the objectives of the farm. The second duty of the farm that I have here is that he must be able to draw up a plan or plans to pursue or achieve the set objectives. He must be able to make decisions as to the implementation of the chosen plan or plans. Then he must be able to also build in some checks and balances to control his plans as they are being implemented. And this will help him to see whether there are deviations from the proposed plans so that immediate adjustments can be made. And once the farm manager has taken a decision, he must be prepared to bear responsibilities that come with such a decision. Now, let's look at another subtopic on the farm management. Basic tools and concepts in farm management. Some basic tools and concepts are commonly used in farm management. And some of these like production processes and even, by the illiterate farmers that are not learned, they use these tools and concepts, subconsciously. I have like 7 here and we'll take them one by one. The first one is the law of diminishing returns. The law of diminishing returns. This is one of the most important concepts in farm management. And it states that if you add more of a variable input to a fixed input, then the total product will initially start to increase at an increasing rate, then after a while at a decreasing rate, and it will eventually decline. I'll take that again. The law of diminishing returns states that if you add more of a variable input to a fixed input, the total product will initially start to increase at an increasing rate, then after a while at a decreasing rate, and it will eventually decline. For example, in weeding a vegetable farm, now the farmland is the fixed input here. The yield of the vegetable, increases, reaches a peak and then decline through the trampling on of vegetables as its task is overdone through employing more workers to weed the farm. Now, here I said the vegetable farm is a fixed input. The labor employed to do the weeding is a variable input. Now, if the farmer employs additional number of labor to wield the fixed size of the vegetable farm, initially the yield of vegetable will increase, and it will increase at an increasing rate. After a while, as the number of labor added is goes up, the rate at which the yields will increase will start to decrease, and after a while it will lead into a loss because with time, as the number of labor is continually added to the fixed vegetable land, there will be more labor than needed, and it will result into trampling on of the vegetables, which will eventually cause a loss or a decline in yield. Now, this principle guides the efficient allocation of resources because it enables the farmer to employ additional labor in the example of the vegetable farm, as long as the added return obtained by payment of additional labor is greater than the additional cost of employing the labor. So as long as the yields, the cost of yields is more than the cost of hiring an additional labor, then the farmer will be able to still hire more labor. That is simply the law of diminishing returns. The second principle here, the second concept here is the principle of substitution. This principle of substitution. There is an array of production techniques open to a farmer which constantly change due to the introduction of new technologies. For example, the farmer can use chemical weeding as compared with hand weeding to weed his maize farm, for instance. Now, what the farmer needs to find out is the gain in substituting chemical weeding for hand weeding. And here there are many advantages that the farmer will enjoy if he substitutes chemical weeding for hand weeding. Number one, chemical weeding costs far less than hand weeding. Then labor for hand weeding is relatively scarce. Then there may be increase in yield as a result of effective weed control. The farmer is thus always constantly deciding whether to employ one factor or the other, particularly as the cost structure changes. So that is the principle of substitution. The next concept to look at is the opportunity cost. Opportunity cost. This helps farmers, to decide which enterprise to go into given the available resources. For example, a piece of farmland can be used to cultivate maize or vegetable. Now, if cultivating maize will yield an estimated income of 700,000 naira per hectare, and cultivating vegetable will yield an income of 900,000 naira per hectare, then the opportunity cost of growing maize, that's if the farmer decides to grow maize now, the opportunity cost of growing maize will be the 900,000 naira forgone, but which could have been earned if vegetables were grown. Then, so it is right, for the farmer to know what he could have earned if he has put his resources in alternative enterprise. It is important to know the options available to a farmer in using his resources, his productive resources. Now, and logically, a farmer would want to choose the higher yielding enterprise, but there are reasons why, you know, at different times, a farmer may choose a particular enterprise, even though, it may not yield as much as what another enterprise will give him. Now, there are quite a number of reasons why the farmer could not put his resources in the higher yielding enterprise, which is the vegetable in this case. Number one, he may want to grow maize for his family consumption or for feeding his livestock. Then there may be constraints of water and labor needed for cultivating vegetables. So these concepts of opportunity cost is also very useful in farm management. The fourth concept is that of farm costs. Farm costs could be fixed or variable. So we have variable costs and fixed costs. For example, in a poultry enterprise, the expenses on houses, cages, and other large equipments are fixed costs. On other equipments, like there are other equipments, they are fixed costs, and they are fixed costs because whether eggs are produced or not, the houses and the cages are already paid for, and so they will just be there. So they are fixed costs. Now, on the other hand, the expenses on feed, on drugs, and on labor employed, to look after the poultry are termed variable costs because they get used up in the production process. Now, if no bird is kept at the end of the day, then no variable costs will be incurred. The rule is that as long as the farmer can cover his variable costs, he can remain in production, at least in the short run. But however, he must be able to cover not only his variable costs, but also a substantial part of his fixed cost. Excuse me. The next concept we'll look at is that of comparative advantage. Comparative advantage. This is a very useful tool in international trade, and it simply says that a country should specialize in the production of goods in which it has a comparative advantage. That is, goods that the country can produce at lower cost, and import those goods in which it has a comparative disadvantage. And this concept is even valid in agriculture. Now, relating this to agriculture, it means all things being equal, crops and livestock should be raised in areas where the physical and other resources are really relatively best suited to their production. For example, onions are grown in the northern part of Nigeria because the weather there supports or suits its production. While cocoa, is grown in the southern part of Nigeria for the same reason. So crops and livestock should be raised in the areas where the physical and other resources are relatively best suited for their production. The next concept that we'll consider is that of gross margin and farm profits. Gross margin and farm profits. The gross margin of an enterprise is the difference between the total revenue and the variable cost of production. The gross margin of an enterprise is the difference between the total revenue and the variable cost of production. Now, the gross margin of an enterprise, for instance, maize production, measures the contribution of that particular enterprise to the farm's total profit. Now, we're assuming that a farm has many or more than one enterprise. So, for instance, a farm on which maize is being cultivated, and another part cassava, and another part yam. So each of these crop will have, they will have their contribution to the total farm's profit. So the gross margin measures the contribution of a particular enterprise to the farm's total profit. Now, this is why the gross margin of each enterprise is an important determining factor in selecting a combination of enterprises on the farm. So the farmer should know or have an idea of what each enterprise will contribute to the total farm's profit. Now, when all the gross margins for each enterprise on the farm has been determined, then they're all added together and the fixed cost is deducted. So what is left after the fixed cost has been deducted from the total gross margin is the farm profit. For example, if a farm's total revenue is 25,000 naira with a fixed cost of 9,000 naira and variable cost of 3,000 naira, then the gross margin will be total revenue minus variable cost, which is 25,000 naira minus 3,000 naira to give 22,000 naira. And the farm profit will be gross margin minus fixed cost, which is 22,000 naira minus 9,000 naira to give 13,000 naira. The next concept and the last one that will be considered here is that of valuation and depreciation. I mean, these are another set of concepts that are very important in farm management. The concept of valuation and depreciation. Valuation is a process of attaching prices to given assets like building, vehicles, growing crops, stored products, and so on and so forth. The method of valuation affects the profit or loss on a given farm. And so for consistency, it is important that the same method is used every year. And there are various methods of valuation, and the purpose of the valuation will determine the method of valuation to use. We have I have like 5 here. The five types of 5 methods of valuation. Number one is valuation at cost. Valuation at cost. That is, the actual cost of purchasing an equipment or building is given, and that's the value that the particular asset is given. Now, valuation at market price, which is used in valuing purchased farm supplies. Valuation at net selling price, which is used for assets meant for sale. The fourth method is the valuation at cost less depreciation, used for assets such as the big machineries, and breeding stock. And the last method I have here is valuation by reproductive value or replacement cost. Now let's look at depreciation. Depreciation is a decline in value of a physical asset over a period of time. Depreciation is a term that everybody uses. Now, it involves the spreading of the cost of an asset over its useful life, and it is considered an annual expense because it's something that is that occurs annually, and as such, it is regarded as a variable cost. I'll take that again. Depreciation is considered as an annual expense, and as such is regarded as a variable cost. Let's consider a tractor, as an example. A tractor used on the farm. The annual depreciation is meant to represent the wear and tear as a result of using it. So if a farmer wants to replace such a tractor, for example, let's say in 7 years' time, Then he should set aside such annual depreciation as savings to purchase a new one when the existing tractor is due for replacement. So instead of looking for money or funds to buy, a new tractor, a wise farmer will, from the year one, from the initial year of use, will start to, set aside particular amount of money as depreciation, so that at the end of the useful life of the asset, you would have saved at least quite a substantial amount of money that will help him in buying a new one when the existing one is due for replacement. Now, assets do not, depreciate at the same rate. Assets depreciate, by reason of use, intensity of use, depending on the care and maintenance that asset, is given. For example, a car used for official purpose will depreciate faster than one that is used by an individual. Now let's quickly look at the methods of calculating depreciation. There are basically three methods. The first one is the straight line method. We have the declining balance method and the sum of the year digits method. The straight line method is the most popular and the simplest of the three methods. For example, if an asset costs 5,000 naira and is expected to last for 10 years, then the annual depreciation will be 5,000 naira divided by 10, which will give us 500 naira. So what then should be set aside every year for 10 years is 500 naira. If the asset can be sold off at the end of 10 years, then we have what is called a salvage value or a scrap value. And this value must be taken into consideration when calculating depreciation. So depreciation in this case will be the original cost minus the salvage value divided by the useful life of the asset, which is in years. The second method is a declining balance method, and here a certain rate of depreciation is taken, usually in percentage, could be 10%, 25%, and what have you. So a certain rate of depreciation is taken every year and is applied to the balance at the beginning of each year. So depreciation rate stays constant using this method. The third method is the sum of the year digits. So when it is desired to distribute depreciation expense more heavily in the first few years of use and more likely, in the later years, then this method, is considered better than the declining balance method. And this method uses a fraction in which the number of years of lifespan are added up and used as the denominator, while the numerator is the number of years left for the asset to be used. This is then multiplied by what we call a wearing value, which is, the original cost minus the salvage cost. Let me explain using an example. For example, if the lifespan of an asset is 28 years, then the denominator will be the sum total of all the years. That means the denominator will be 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5 plus 6 plus 7 to give us 28 years. And the numerator will be 7 in the first year. So the fraction will be 7 over 8 in the first year. In the second year, the numerator will be 6 to give us a fraction of 6 over 28. So this fraction will be applied to what I called wearing value, which is the original cost minus the salvage cost. So this is how to calculate the sum of the year, and then this is how to calculate depreciation using the sum of the year digits. The next subtopic here is farm planning and budgeting. Farm planning and budgeting. Farm planning is defined as the preparation of an operational program for a farm, which will ensure, number one, the conservation of land and other resources, and two, the efficient utilization of factors of production, thereby increasing the farmer's net income and satisfaction. Let me take that again. Farm planning is defined as the preparation of an operational program for a farm, which will ensure two things. First thing is the conservation of land and other resources. We talk about sustainable use of land and other, production resources. Very important. So it will ensure the conservation of land and other resources and the efficient utilization of the factors of production, thereby increasing the farmer's net income and satisfaction. Farm plans are required particularly when there are limiting factors such as land, labor, and capital, with the aim of maximization of returns to these factors. It aims at achieving profit maximization with limited production factors. Now, it is essential that plans are written down. It is very, very important that you put your plan on paper for two reasons that I gave here. Now, the first reason is that the assumptions surrounding a particular plan can be checked in case the plan falls short of expectation. It will be a guide to know if the plan is going according to what is stated or is it's falling below expectation. The plan can then be checked against achievements, and changes can be made in estimates depending on the availability of data. Once it is noticed that there are deviations from a particular plan, then it is necessary to make to look at the achievements, and changes can be made in estimates depending on the availability of data. Now let's look at the methods of farm planning. There are three major methods of planning. We have the budgeting, program planning, and linear programming. But for the purpose of this class, we'll look at only budgeting. Now, what is a budget? A budget is defined as a detailed quantitative statement of a plan and forecast of its financial results. So a budget has two major parts, the physical part and the financial aspect. Now, the physical aspect is concerned with what to produce, how much to produce, and the needed resources for production. And the second aspect, which is the financial aspect, is concerned with the expected costs and returns, and invariably the profits. So this is just what a budget is. Items in a budget include fixed costs, variable costs, total revenue, gross margin, net margin, total variable costs, and so on and so forth. There are three types of budgeting. We have the complete budgeting, partial budgeting, and the break-even budgeting. So let's look at them one after the other. The complete budgeting is usually carried out when total reorganization of a farm is desired, or when a new farm is starting outrightly, or when there are new technologies and methods of production introduced, or when the farm is when the size of operation or the scale of operation of the farm is needed to be increased. Now, once a long run budget is prepared, it provides a framework within which a short run or a year-to-year plan is developed. So it's important, at the start of a farm, for instance, to make a good and a good long run budget so that changes may be made in the short run. Now, partial budgeting. Partial budgeting is carried out only when small changes are desired. So just okay, you want to add this, you want to remove this. So that's partial budgeting. Now, the last type of budgeting is what we call break-even budgeting, which is used to estimate the yield to provide a balance in cost and revenue so that the farmer is neither better off nor worse off. Break-even budgeting is usually prepared to know the actual revenue that can be generated from investing a certain cost, so that we want to know the exact um, income or yield that can be got when a particular amount of money is invested. Let's quickly look at the steps in making farm budgets. Certain steps need to be followed in preparing budgets if a meaningful plan is to be produced. So the steps are: number one, determine the farming or the farmer's goals and preferences. Very, very important. The first thing to do is to know what the farmer wants to do, and to know what the farmer intends to do, what are his goals, what are his preferences, what are things he wants. Now, farm resources available to the farmer. Now, to all the goals, what are the resources achieved to help in achieving, currently being in use. Determine which of the resources are currently being in use. Now, prepare a statement of expenditure and income for the farm on the basis of current utilization of the farm, determine level of farm attained on the farm. Let me start with the steps. Second, if a meaningful plan will be produced at the end of the day. Now, this first step is to determine the farmer's goals and preferences. Very, very important. What does the farmer want to do? What are his, like we said earlier, what are his objectives? What does he want to achieve? The second step is to list the farm's resources available to the farmer. What are the resources at the disposal of the farmer that will help him in achieving his goals? The next step is to determine which of the resources are currently being used. Excuse me. Now, after that, prepare a statement of expenditure and income for the farm on the basis of current utilization of the farm resources. Then analyze the inputs and output relationships to determine the farm performance or efficiency attained on the farm. And after this, you compare the farm performance or efficiency with the standards available in nearby farms to know how your own farm is faring. Now, the next step is to diagnose weaknesses, and the weaknesses are both structural and operational. Now, the next thing to do is to determine the priorities in correcting the structural and operational weaknesses identified. Then, prepare a number of alternative farm plans and choose one as the final plan to be adopted. Then supervise the implementation of the program under the plan. And the last step is to evaluate the results. So these are the important steps to take, in preparing a farm budget. The next subtopic, which is the last, is risk and uncertainties in agriculture. Risk and uncertainties in agriculture. Now, most investors prefer to invest their capital in other industrial enterprises rather than agriculture. And when some of them do, emphasis is on the livestock production, particularly poultry, because these have a a short payback period. Emphasis is on livestock like poultry, which has a short payback period. And the reason for this unwillingness to, invest in agriculture can be found in the risk and uncertainties associated with agricultural production. The agricultural enterprise has special characteristics that make its management more difficult than industrial management. And most agricultural decisions are taken in the environment of risk and uncertainties, like I said earlier, because agriculture is prone to a lot of risk and uncertainties. Now, farmers take decisions in the present which will affect their production later. Farmers go out to plant when in the time that they feel is right to plant, but they are not sure whether the rain will be sufficient at the end of the day. They are not sure of security and a lot of other factors that we'll look at shortly. Farmers are not sure of the following. Farmers are not sure of the weather condition even after planting. They are not sure of water availability, government actions and policies. They are not sure that if the prevailing government policies can change, and these policies change, without the farmers being prepared most times. Then there's the issue with power supply, technological changes, changes in input and output prices, adequate security. Farmers are not sure of adequate security. Nigeria is being faced with a lot of insecurity issues, and the farmers are, greatly affected. And that has brought about food shortage in the country. Then we have issues of theft and death. Now, for all of these risks and uncertainties that farmers face, there are solutions that farmers try to, there are some steps that farmers try to take, to mitigate or reduce the problems of risk and uncertainties. So we talk about the solutions to problems of risk and uncertainty. Now, I have four of them here. One is diversification. Diversification, cost flexibility, inventory management, and the guaranteed minimum prices. We take them one by one. Diversification. Enterprises with lowest correlation of net income should be combined. Enterprises with lowest correlation of net income should be combined. For instance, to reduce the variability in income in crop production, crops like yam and cassava should not be combined together, since both require similar resources and income from the two enterprises are likely to be affected by the same factors. Excuse me. So on the other hand, income from poultry and yam is not likely to be related. So in order to maintain a stable income, crops and livestock should be combined, because if the farmer faces challenges in his crop production, the livestock that is producing will fetch him some money. So it is advised that crops and livestock should be combined rather than combining two similar crops. And there are some crops that are not also similar. So, two crops that they have unrelated or uncorrelated net income can also be combined. Now, the next The next point that we'll consider is cost flexibility. Cost flexibility. In order to ensure that in times of trouble, production can easily be adjusted, the level of fixed cost must always be monitored. Now, a farm that has more fixed cost is in relation to variable cost will find it more difficult to adjust its production system than a farm with lower fixed costs. So it is important that um, not so much is invested in fixed cost, so that the farm or the enterprise will be flexible and can easily be adjusted as needed. The next point here is inventory management. Inventory management. A good farm manager should monitor the price movements of all farm inputs. Now, if the prices are likely to rise, for instance, he should stock his warehouse. But when the prices are likely to fall, then it should stock less. That's simply inventory management. Now, the last point to be considered here is the guaranteed minimum prices. Guaranteed minimum prices. This is mostly done during gluts, when a particular produce is abundant in the market due to bumper harvest, which forces the selling price down. Now, when this happens, government, buys from farmers at an agreed minimum price. When farmers are unable to sell at profitable prices due to low current market prices, and the minimum price which the government, which the government has agreed to buy their farm produces, must cover the cost of production and also allow for normal profit for it to be effective, so that the farmers at the end of the day will still make their profit. And this has brought us to the end of the class.